prescribing the wrong solutions as well. And so, as leaders, policymakers, and as citizens, we must resist the temptation of short-termism. Although short-termism is what our people feel needs to be addressed. They want urgent answers and they want them now. We must instead embrace a deeper and more honest analysis, one that acknowledges that the challenge that we face today is the outcome of systems, decisions, and practices of the past, but also the mistakes that we too have made in moving forward. We need to be honest enough to acknowledge that. But understanding history should not be an exercise just in nostalgia. It should actually be a call to action, which is precisely why I appreciate the holding of this session, that you, as a news agency, you've taken the bull by the horns and you've put on the table a debate. And I'm told that you've got speakers from China, India, and other places. That is really good. And also the ambition that you are setting, just for the nation, to begin to envision a 5 million job situation for us in 10 years. Because if our present was shaped by design, then our future too must be shaped by the design that we put together. That's what we need to do. So in the end, transformation should not just be a slogan. It is, and it should be a deliberate project of restructuring the foundations of our economy and society. People are often terrified of even talking about transformation. They are terrified that if we talk about transformation, we are going to break eggs, we are going to cause a massive revolution. But if we are to move forward, there must be transformation. And in other words, there must also be sacrifices that have to be made. It means we've got to expand ownership. For how are we going to grow our economy if we are not going to broaden and expand ownership? Because ownership, the concentration thereof, is what is said to have caused the origins of the problem of unemployment and inequality where we are. We therefore must broaden participation in the economy. We must also rewire our spatial planning to bring more people closer to opportunities. And in this regard, the democratic government has also been found to blame, because even as we build human settlements, we build them further and further and further away from areas of economic activity. But we must also focus on building a capable state. And I am told that people from China are here. What they did to turn their economy around, they focus at local government level. They strengthen local government, understanding very well that economic activity does not happen at the union buildings. Economic activity happens at the local government level. That's where it happens. And they did so by focusing more attention on what our councillor or their councillors do at local government level. That those councillors must understand the workings of the economy. Councillors must also be able to know and understand the budget of their own city or town. They must know and how it works. They must be able to read a balance sheet, the balance sheet of their city. Now, we have been found wanting in that. And it's also been the past that we inherited, the terrible past that our apartheid education delivered to the majority of the people of our country. So in many ways, we are dealing with the past, we're dealing with the present, and we're dealing with the future. I often tell people that we, unlike many other countries, have to burn the candle not only on two sides, but in three sides. At the top, at the bottom, and in the middle, in order to move our country forward. So in the end, strengthening local government, which, as we all know as South Africans, is in a terrible state. And that is why we've made it a priority of the 7th administration to strengthen local government. And yes, the other important thing, we must invest in skills in our education because there is a mismatch of skills. Our past, which I spoke to very briefly, determined that Black people were in the majority who had been excluded from economic activity, were just given poor education, and they were given the type of education that would continue making them drawers of water and hewers of wood. And that is what was said was good for them. And knowing that education is a generational endeavor, it does not take place so quickly. You don't produce engineers or an engineering cohort just even in one generation. It takes time. And so therefore, we have to focus on developing skills, but we also want those skilled people to be underpinned by innovation. And in essence, it means confronting the roots and not merely only trimming the branches, the roots of what apartheid did to us. Now we are in the process of doing that, but that too is a long-term process. But even as we do that, it means that we've got to burn the candle at its beginning, in the middle, and also on the other side. Do everything at one go, because our people don't have the patience. They're all in a hurry, because the terrible past of apartheid must be eradicated as quickly as possible. Now, if we are to succeed, we must therefore anchor our efforts in a capable and developmental state, a state that understands the historical context of inequality, of poverty, that has the institutional capacity to act and to act decisively, precisely what we're working on, but that coordinates across sectors and spheres of government, but also where there are partnerships with business, with labor and communities. And right now, the architecture of consensus building that we have in the country is pretty good. We build consensus, something that I'm always accused of, that he's always consulting, he's always talking to people, he's always setting this up, and he's always doing that. And let me say, I will continue doing precisely that, because that is the best way of getting things done, when everybody is in the tent instead of outside the tent and doing something inside the tent. So that is what has been found to work quite effectively. We have seen this in nations that rose from adversity, where leadership, systems, and skills were aligned towards a common purpose. Now, as we seek to understand the historical context, we also need to be more united in understanding that what are the causes of such high unemployment in our country. Now, South Africa's high unemployment is not the result of a single failure. It's not the result of just one thing that failed. It is the outcome of deep historical and policy-linked factors interacting over time. To understand it properly, you have to look at it more holistically, and looking at it holistically means that we've got to look back where it originates from. But now, there is a need, and this is where I welcome what News 24 is doing. And I applaud and commend News 24 for convening this summit in the spirit of the national dialogue to discuss solutions to the persistent challenge of unemployment. Now, I'm rather glad that as a news agency you're doing this. For a minute, as everyone was aligned against the national dialogue, I thought News 24 too was part of the crowd that was opposing the national dialogue. So I applaud you for being part of this process of national dialogue. And this to me is, lifting, spirit lifting, in the sense that what you are doing is precisely what we want the national dialogue to do, to have conversations around the country on difficult and intricate problems and challenges. And you have decided to tackle the most difficult one head on. And you've brought people from many parts of the world. And I'm truly glad. It's a pity that my program just allows me to be here for a while. I would have wanted to listen to all the speakers, but I'm sure you will have the report. And I hear you've also issued a survey report. Now, creating jobs is the most and foremost priority of our government. Our single greatest challenge is to translate positive economic momentum into jobs for the millions of South Africans who today remain unemployed. Now, a job is more than just an income. It is about dignity, it is about confidence, it is about a sense of belonging and an ability to contribute to our community and our society. The rate of unemployment in our country is unique. It has its roots, as I said, in our past, which was built only for a small part of the people of South Africa. And so therefore, it is the result of our inability to fully reverse that legacy and of exclusion. And we must therefore do everything we can to reverse that legacy and to create jobs, because we can no longer continue just using it as an excuse. We need to understand where that comes from, but then redouble our efforts to ensure that we eradicate that legacy. Many young people face the prospect of leaving school without a foothold in the economy, unable to lift themselves and more particularly their own families out of poverty. And many young people have to pay, even before they start work, they have to pay the black tax. Black tax meaning they have to look after their families because they themselves are a product of having been looked after by their families, by grandmothers and great-grandmothers. That is why we have placed jobs at the heart of our agenda, to give every young person in our country a chance for a better life. And to do this, we need more rapid and inclusive economic growth. We know that growth creates jobs, and economists have told us that each percentage of growth in our economy, on our GDP, creates X number of jobs. When our economy has grown in the past, unemployment has reduced. That is why we are focused on implementing economic reforms and creating an environment for business to invest. And we know that absent of the reforms that we are implementing right now, our economic prospects were just facing south on a continuous basis for over a decade and more. And now that we are implementing the reforms that are in the energy sector, the logistics sector, and even simple things like visas, just granting visas to CEOs of major companies who found it very difficult to come and work here and manage the monies of their offshore investors was so difficult. And we had state capture that just really messed up a number of government departments, and where corruption was running rife, which was really organized, where even our tax collector was captured, and all that were impediments to growth. Now, we set up Operation Vulindlela to open the way, which is a joint initiative of the presidency and Treasury. And that was set up to accelerate the implementation of the structural reforms that would enable us to address many of the key binding constraints on our economy. And of course, many countries go through reforms. They go through structural reforms, and our reforms were of a special nature because there were systems and processes that were broken, deliberately broken along the way. And these, therefore, had to be rebuilt. And rebuilding them was not just like the wand of a hand. It took time. It took getting people to get used to a new culture of work, a new system of work, and straightening out systems so that processes can function much better. But it also meant getting the right people into the right positions. It has made progress by focusing on a limited number of priorities with the greatest impact, developing clear and action-oriented plans and enabling a coordinated approach across government to ensure delivery. One of the areas which was like critical in terms of addressing the constraints was just getting everyone to work together, just intergovernmental work, breaking down the silos and getting people who can move processes that can improve our economy to work together. That was one of the things that had been broken down and had to be rebuilt. We are now turning our attention to another crisis that we face. We've repositioned our energy architecture and repositioned it for the future. And in line with what happens in other countries, and those who come from other countries, as I've heard, either India, China, and so on, we looked at what you do and how you have done it, for instance, in your energy or electricity sector. And we saw how it works and how it has delivered the growth of your economies. And we said, if we do want our economy to grow, this is precisely what we also need to do. We need to restructure our energy sector. I spent a considerable amount of time with a section of workers. I see the president of COSATU is here. One of her affiliates came to me and said, President, we are against what is happening, the restructuring of Eskom. We believe that that is the wrong path. Eskom should not be restructured. It should not be unbundled. Eskom should be left as it is. And I had to take them through the challenges that we faced with load shedding, but more importantly, how Eskom became heavily debt burdened, and how in restructuring Eskom, we're solving not only that, but we're also increasing more investment in energy, but how we are modernizing, like almost exploding into our new century, And I said, we were like in the Stone Age. Now we are getting into the century we are living in, because our electricity must be restructured. There must be generation, there must be transmission, and there must be distribution. And laid it out much more clearly to them. And they said, no, but why should Eskom not be the only generator? I said, my good friend, having Eskom being the only generator of electricity means that we are exposed to one monopoly. When that one monopoly fails, it's all darkness, total darkness. And I even gave them an example. I said, next time you fly from Johannesburg to Cape Town or to Durban, or Cape Town to Johannesburg, which I often do, maybe fly at night, I said, look out the windows and see the lights all over. We are one of the most lit countries on the continent. And I said, look at those lights and ask yourself where they come from. They come from one company. When that one company fails, it'll be darkness. And I then said, I was there when we started not breaking up Telkom, when we started allowing mobile telephony. Telkom was the only telephony company in our country. They did fixed line mostly and telegraph, and we didn't have mobile then. And I said to them, it was when we allowed mobile telephony to happen, and we gave licenses to more than just Telkom, that penetration and telecommunication spread. Today, we must have 175% penetration of telephony in our country, and it has just created a new industry, employed more people, brought in more investments, and many people are conducting their businesses through mobile phones and all that. So our economy was really narrow because we relied on one monopoly. And I said, today, possibly you in your house, I was talking to the president of the union, I said, in your house, you probably have solar. You are generating electricity. And if you do generate more, you give some of it to Eskom to put on the transmission. And he said, you are right, President. You are very right. I said, I do the same. So we need to have more generators so that we can bring prices down, so that consumers can then have choice. The transmission should continue being owned by government, Eskom by government, and there will be other generators as well. And distribution is already diversified anyway. It is only then that they were able to understand. So those reforms, as we are deepening them and broadening them, are going to continue injecting more growth in the economy of our country. Already more than 100 billion rand has been invested in renewable energy in the Northern Cape. And more is now happening in the Western Cape, Eastern Cape, and even in Mpumalanga, through wind and solar as well. Now, water is another challenge that we are facing. Water is not only an important resource for supporting the lives of our people, but it drives the economy as well. So we're facing challenges there, and we are now embarking on water reforms. Now, without a secure supply of water, companies do not invest and jobs are not created. So to solve our unemployment problem, we must solve water, electricity, logistics, and a whole number of other areas as well. Infrastructure, roads, and all that. Now, given the extent and complexity of this challenge, I established a National Water Crisis Committee, and had to withstand the criticism, the usual criticism. Oh, he's setting up another committee. He's setting up another discussion group. And yes, I am. The one on electricity has done well for us. So that works. So we're doing precisely that to oversee the systemic reforms that we need to embark upon to address the dysfunction in many municipalities. What we did with our constitutional architecture, we gave the responsibility, now key responsibilities, we gave them to municipalities. Now, in time, we will need to address this. Now, we took very important functions, gave them to the weakest link of our government system, water. But not only water, today we've got foot and mouth disease. The foot and mouth disease that we are going through now started at the municipal level. The other time we had listeriosis, which is about food. It started at the municipality level, almost engulfed a big portion of the country, and today 14 million cattle have to be vaccinated because a municipality or municipalities did not have the capacity to be able to ensure that the movement of cattle moves in such a way that we do not spread foot and mouth disease. So it is at municipal level that we now have to solve the water problem, where municipalities have demonstrated that they are not able to provide water services. We will now use our powers at national level to intervene and ensure that responsibility for water delivery is assigned to those who can. And it can be the private sector, it can be another structure of government or the National Water and Sanitation Department. We will confront the water crisis in the same way that we've tackled load shedding, by acting with speed and with resolve and implement a clear evidence-based plan. We had a meeting of the Water Crisis Committee yesterday. We're going to have another one on Tuesday. We're now going to start moving forward because having a well-functioning water system will create more jobs, will create more young people with skills. Now, the reforms that we have embarked on are in the end not easy, and they are not complete. They are not easy because those who are in those structures are at times very reluctant to see new ways of doing things. They are used to their own old ways, and when you reform, you're changing the way their system works. And at times you find that it is true that, those who are used to a particular way of doing things, they don't want to change very easily. So we have to impose reforms on them. The changes that people want to see in their lives are, for the most part, yet to be materialized, and our people are yet to see them. Yet we can now say with confidence that we are now on the right track. We know what the problems are. We are not fumbling in the dark anymore. We now know the actual problems, and we are now addressing those problems. But growth on its own will not bring about millions of South Africans who are unemployed from the margin into the fold. It will take time. And that is why it is so important for this conversation to take place, which I truly welcome. As we implement bold and structural reforms to lift growth, we are also expanding support for the unemployed to sustain productive livelihoods. Now, jobs will be created as the economy grows, as we open the various arteries of the economy on an ongoing basis through the reforms we are. But at the same time, this is where we burn the candle in the middle. At the same time, we've got to look after those people who are vulnerable. We must continue to strengthen our social protection system to reach all the unemployed South Africans with a basic level of support. And we cannot ever say, because you're unemployed, wait until something happens. We actually say we are going to do both at the same time by redesigning the social relief of distress grant Remember, we introduced it during COVID, when we faced the biggest downturn in our economy, when 2 million people lost their jobs overnight. We had to intervene to introduce a grant, and that grant, little as it was, has helped to put some food on the table, not completely, and we know that for sure. Because of our fiscal challenges, we could not do much more than we did. But we now want to ensure that those receiving the grant should have access to a wide range of support to search for work and to sustain a livelihood. Now, through the presidential employment stimulus, we have created more than 2.5 million opportunities in public and social employment since 2020. The stimulus has shown that public employment is not only about providing an income to those who are in need, it is also about creating meaningful work that benefits communities while at the same time building skills and experience and enabling people to make a way for themselves in the economy. For those who have participated, and we've seen this particularly with young people who participated in the presidential employment stimulus, which has operated in a variety of sectors of our government system, and of course private sector as well. Those that have operated in the 25,000 schools as education assistants. And remember, they went in during COVID and assisted teachers to focus more on teaching. And it was during that period that everybody's eyes were opened about the capability of these young people. They were tech savvy, they were absolutely good teacher assistants, and they could teach in a new way than what we've had in the past. And they just endeared themselves to the teachers, to the principals, but more importantly, to the learners as well as to the parents. So through that whole process, as we bring them in, although they don't stay for too long because it's a public employment initiative, they stay for a year, but during that year, they learn skills in the workplace. They become job ready. And some of them, on leaving that opportunity, are employable. They are able not to show only on their CV, but their own capability, because it unlocks new opportunities, but it also gives them hope. So the stimulus has placed these school assistants in many schools and supported by the restoration of a number of areas where we work. It could be in various, for instance, areas in our country where work was needed. It has also helped community-based organizations employ people to strengthen the fight against gender-based violence, where many of them have also been brought in to counsel others. So all this has helped a great deal, and these are good examples. And through this Presidential Youth Employment Initiative, we are supporting all these young people to grow and to get skills and to be ready for the labor market through the strong collaboration between government, non-profit organizations, and the private sector. Now, there are now more than 5 million young people who we have registered on the SA Youth Mobi site, an innovative platform that connects young people to opportunities for earning and learning. And many of these young people are finding that through just flighting their presence, their existence, and their CVs on this Mobi site, they are able to get jobs. We need more companies to use this site to employ young people, making use of the cutting-edge technology which the network has built to set up opportunities for young people. And a number of young people often say, I got a job through this Mobi site. through a partnership with business, we also established the Youth Employment Service. And this I discussed with the businessman who I was having breakfast with. And I said, but your companies are not bringing in young people. Why don't you bring in young people into your job spaces? And the notion and the idea of the Employment Youth Service, the Youth Employment Service was born. We now call it the YES initiative. Now, that one has already created more than 250,000 jobs, real jobs, that young people have been able to get into. Now, we have demonstrated that, yes, we can create opportunities, but we need to do more. And it is in this regard, and I'm glad, Adrian, you've called this type of platform together. It is in this regard that I call on all companies to be part of the YES drive, to enable more and more young people to take their first step into the work environment, and to provide them with the skills and the expertise and the experience, rather, that they need to succeed in the world of God, in the world of work. Yes, in the world of God. And if, for instance, as you are seeking to do through this national dialogue iteration, if we can get government to continue creating an environment, a conducive environment for our economy to grow, as we are seeking to do and as we are doing, and if we can get the private sector to be committed as well to giving young people, or all our people, opportunities and skilling them, we will get somewhere. And one of the things that I have said needs to be done is to overhaul the CETA system and replace it with a fit-for-purpose system. Because I have found, and in my many travels around the world, one of the two countries that I visited and looked very closely at what they do, Germany and Switzerland, where they have a dual system, skills, academic skills acquisition, as well as practical skills acquisition in the workplace. Now, this is the way that we are now going to move forward. The CETA system has not served us well at all. It must now be changed. Now, we must build on our strength as a country to create jobs for the economy of the future. We have one of the most sophisticated financial systems in the world. We can position South Africa as a destination for financial services, for companies to locate here, to locate their African operations here as well, for entry into the rest of our continent. We have among the best solar and wind resources in which many companies are investing in our country by rolling out renewable energy. And we've got enormous advantages that can lead to the creation of jobs. And all this requires, as your initiative today has called for, collaboration between the private sector, between the public sector, between labor and community-based organizations. And it is when we all work together that we will be able to build a very strong platform for growth in a wide range of sectors, from green steel to new energy vehicles. We have a thriving agricultural sector, and in fact, the agricultural sector itself, and I hope you do talk about it, is the one that can create 1 million and more jobs. And we will be focusing on that very, very closely. As you heard me say during SONA, I want us to employ 10,000 extension officers so that we can get our people to go back to the land and work the land and eke out not only a living, but also to start building wealth and to start building their own small, medium enterprises. So it is this that we are trying to do. We are receiving all the assistance that I believe we can get. And Adrian, I see your initiative today as being so important. And it isn't often that I see a newspaper group entering into a space that is so meaningful, so forward-looking, and so contributing to the progress of the country. Now, in this regard, I applaud you, and I say, may you continue as News 24 to do something like this. You've done something that is really great to introduce not only a debate, but to contribute to the national dialogue. And I must end by saying, what else are we doing which is impeding the growth of our economy? The criminal justice system needs to be restored so that we can Now, what we've been hearing, all the horrendous stories have been quite revealing. There are some who said, no, President, you should not have set up this commission. It's terrible news. And I say, we must hear all the terrible news. We need to understand where we come from. And having understood where we come from, we will then understand what we now need to do in the present. What the Matlanga Commission is doing is giving us a great opportunity to overhaul our police system, our criminal justice system, to clean it out, to get all the thugs and the rogues out of the system so that we restore that system. Because in the end, passive crime, which has been happening, breeds fear and mistrust. It has both a devastating human cost and a direct economic impact as well, a negative one. It increases the cost of doing business and discourages businesses from investing. And a number of business people have said, we would want to invest, but your crime rate is just far too high. So this is what this opportunity then gives us. That is why rebuilding our criminal justice system is as important for jobs as any employment program is. And that's what we focus on. We will complete the implementation of our action plan on the recommendations of State Capture Commission. And many people often think that we're doing nothing about the Zondo Commission. A lot is being done. And I would just say South Africans must listen carefully to some of the things that are underway. There was an Ipsos report or survey the other day, and they said, and Adrian and all of you will know, they said South Africans are the most pessimistic people in the world. Many people are pessimistic, but in South Africa, we've taken it to another level. Everything is terrible. And they even say, we think that we have more foreigners than any other country. People think in South Africa we've got 50% of the people who live here are foreigners. And it is not true. So Ipsos has come up with that report that says we are pessimistic. We want to be more optimistic. And that is why I applaud what you are doing with this intervention, because we need hope. And that's why I started with the word hope. And you are positioning the hope with a vision, a clear objective of 5 million jobs in 10 years. That is hope. And we need to move away from that pessimism and become more hopeful. And also know, as I end, there is no problem without a solution. That is what Nelson Mandela taught me. that every problem is not only an opportunity to solve it, but it is also a moment when you have a great opportunity to move forward. So all the challenges that we face are great opportunities for us to move forward, and there are solutions to all those problems. So I thank you very much, and I look forward, Adrian and your media colleagues, for me interviewing you the next time I see you. Thank you very much.